So therefore, you would have to be like go into that lesson, not put any limitations to begin with of what that voice is capable of doing,
Hmm.
figure it out. And you must also have to be so careful of the language that you're using with these people because you're dealing with egos at a different level to what we're used to. So if someone comes in and they already have a preconceived idea of what they think they can do, what their limitations are, or what they want to sound like, and you know that is totally unsustainable from all your knowledge and even backing that up with all your voice science information. How do you work with that person?
I'm actually dealing with that now.
Oh, wow.
I wish that this is a major artist I'm dealing with, and I wish that I don't want to reveal the artist because it is
No.
a sensitive situation. I'm dealing with that now, though. It's a major artist. She came to me maybe about a month ago,
Mm-hmm.
and said, Miss Lyndia, I'm on tour, and this is what's going on. And we did a Zoom session, and it didn't take long for me to hear. Now, this is a voice that has a career. The world already knows the sound.
Mm-hmm.
So there's already millions of dollars in here.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot mess with that.
Yes.
That's the first thing. But at
Yes.
the same time, they are singing in a way that is clearly not sustainable.
Mm.
So I am in this position. How this is $1 million throat I've got right now in front of me. The world
Yes.
only knows this sound.
Yes.
But the world knows a sound that has been rooted in dysfunction. I
Yes.
call
Yes.
and so we embraced and love a sound, but it was produced in a dysfunctional way.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do I preserve the career but get this sound functional so
Mm.
that the instrument remains healthy? And because they are dealing with a pathology. An
Wow.
otolaryngologist has already confirmed that.
Oh, wow.
So the way they produced this multi-million dollar sound caused the pathology, if that makes sense.
100%. Music labels, they probably don't care about that
No,
in
they
the
don't. That's
moment.
not, but let me just say this in defense of the labels, that's not their job.
No.
It would be the equivalent of you buying shampoo and asking the shampoo company to wash your hair for you.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. That's a good analogy. Oh, you
It is
nailed that
your
one.
instrument. You're
Yes.
supposed to take care of it. That is
Yes.
not the label's job to take care of it. Their job is to sell the product, sell the shampoo to the public, sell
Hmm.
the voice to the public. But they're not responsible for washing your hair. You're responsible for taking care of it.
Hmm. So, how are you working with this person?
Yeah. It is the first session. And because I've seen this many times, she is angry. And of course
At who? Who is she angry at?
she's first angry that this happened to her. So she's just
Right.
angry that this is happening in the middle of a tour.
Right.
The second thing is she got angry at me because I had to tell her the truth. But I didn't take that personally because
No.
I knew where it was coming from. So
Yes.
I let her have her rant.
Yes.
And I said to her, when you're done, we can talk. But I'm
Oh,
going to let you have this because I understand where it's coming from. And I
love
know it's
that.
not personal. I can't take that personally.
Hmm.
And she was like, well, you're supposed to be good at what you're doing. You know, you're telling me that I need to do this. I'm in the middle of a tour. Don't you understand this? I said, you're going to finish your tour. Don't worry about that. I will make sure you finish your tour. But when the tour is done, you have got to come to the studio and we're going to have to show you how all of the sounds that made your career can be produced in a manner that will not compromise the health of the instrument. you are not understanding how to play this instrument.
Mm.
It has a tremendous capacity for unorthodox sounds. Otherwise, children wouldn't be screaming on the playground.
Yes.
It has the capacity. You're just not understanding, and you're not singing within your threshold. You're pushing past your comfort zones. You're pushing past dynamic thresholds, which you don't have to in popular music because you have what, 6 or 7 microphones
I was going to say
amplifying.
amplification.
Why are you pushing past your threshold for dynamics?
You know,
So
I can answer that for the audience because she feels that's what the audience wants. Bigger is better. And you know what? You can only blame too a lot of the TV shows like The Voice for that kind of mindset that's being created with new artists, especially that it has to be big. Big is what sells. All these vocal acrobatics, they feel that they have to be pushing.
And she said, I've heard many of your artists, and she said, and I don't hear them struggling. I said, because they know their thresholds. She said, but it still sounds powerful. And I said, because they understand. And I said, and I also had to explain to her that, there are all levels of vocal athleticism.
Yes.
Some larynxes are more athletic than other larynxes. And I said, that doesn't make them better. It just means that we all have different thresholds of athleticism.
Exactly. Yes.
Every athlete will tell you, everyone cannot be LeBron James on the basketball court. But you can still play basketball, but maybe not at his level. So everyone's athleticism here, that doesn't make you not a great singer. It just means you have to know where your athletic range is and work there. And then ask your audio engineer to support you in the dynamics that the audience wants to get from you. And then be very highly performative.
Yes.
In your stage delivery.
Can I tell you, whenever I was struggling vocally at a gig where I was tired, I tell you what, my performances were the best ever. And I got the biggest round of applause, and I was singing nowhere near to where I could sing. But I tell you, I had every arm and every leg and every booty shaking. I had
That's right.
Every part of the body was moving.
The audience is not aware of how intensely you're going in on the muscle. They don't know that. And if you're standing there and you're highly performative, they'll think that you're, and the interesting thing about this is, artists do this in their music videos when they're not singing. They're not singing in their music videos. But yet when you see them in the music video, you see the performance happen. You see them doing in the music videos.
Yes.
So they have the capacity to be performative and not sing in the music videos. I'm asking you to do the same thing on stage and stay within your athletic range. Now, this young artist, who I'm speaking of, I'm going to have to tweak a lot of things in her audio on her tour. There's going to be a lot of, work with her audio engineer to ensure that her audio, her amplification is really through the roof, so that her efforting is low. I'm also going to have to change some keys to some songs.
I thought they all did that. That was just a given.
No, they all don't do that. No.
Okay.
A lot of that's just pride, though.
Yes, I was going to say, well, I was going to use the word ego, but pride.
Pride.
Let's be kind here. Yes.
And then if they do insist on keeping certain songs in original key, then I will take the bulk of the vocal heavy lifting, if you will, and give it into the background singers.
Yes, you've talked about that.
Yeah, I'll give leads to background singers while the front singer, the major artist is singing. but the background singer is doing predominantly most of the heavy lifting in the
Mm-hmm.
vocals. The
Because
audience never knows any of that.
no, but I watched the footage of Beyonce at the Super Bowl. I don't remember when it actually was live, but I remember seeing it on YouTube just very recently. And Beyonce didn't do as much singing as what I thought she was
No,
doing, because the
no.
background singer sounded like Beyonce.
And then she had some tracks playing as well. There was some
Yeah,
track playing. So she
yeah.
was over singing on some of the tracks. Background singers do a lot of that heavy lifting. And she has a very physical athletic show.
Oh, she's
Um,
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah,
so a
visually,
lot,
like it's a whole production.
it really is.
That's theatrics.
So you have to understand that her fans are always not always coming to hear the vocals as
No,
much as they are for the experience of all that she is.
but they
Um,
wouldn't know that they're not receiving the whole vocal
right,
experience.
they don't
They don't
care.
know. They don't care, but they wouldn't even know. And I
Right.
didn't know till I actually watched it on YouTube.
Exactly, exactly. Um, Beyonce's brand is not like, say, someone like Celine Dion. Celine
Mm.
Dion's fans come to just hear the voice.
Yes.
That's it. They just want Celine to stand there in a beautiful gown and sing.
Hmm.
That's the Celine experience. So those vocals have to be really always showing up at a different kind of level. And even though Beyonce is a wonderful singer, her vocals don't always have to show up in the context of everything else that Beyonce is engaged in on that stage. Some of that can be handed off to background vocals.
And the
So that she can,
audience.
yeah, or the audience, or so she can do all the other things that people want to see her do on the stage.
Mm, mm. So when these artists go on tour, do they come to you pre-tour
Yeah,
for tour preparation, or do
yeah,
they wait till they're in trouble like this singer before they
yes,
come to you?
yeah. I get both. I'm in pre-tour prep now. It's called pre-tour prep, vocal prep, and then they come to me when they're in trouble.
Hmm.
Again, it's not the label, it's not management, it's not anyone's responsibility. It's the artist's responsibility to their own instrument. And this is what I always say to artists. If a guitarist had a broken guitar, he would not go on tour until he got the guitar fixed. Any instrumentalist understands that their instrument needs to be in top condition before they expect to be on tour with that instrument. Singers are really kind of unique in thinking that this will just show up because they will want it to.
Hmm.
And that is because the human voice is a biological instrument. And we will ourselves into the biology of singing as opposed to an external instrument that can be replaced if it breaks.
Yes.
So a lot of times singers think if I just sing hard enough, if I just love hard enough, it'll happen. And
Pushing through.
yeah, if I push hard enough, it'll happen because I know my body, I know how much, until it doesn't happen.
Mm.
And that's when my phone rings, as it did recently with this young lady. And there's nothing that can be done. She can't stop the tour. So what's going to happen is I'm going to have to meet her at one of her legs of her tour in Atlanta, actually. Speak to her musical director, speak to her audio sound engineer, and definitely rehearse with her background vocalist, change some keys to some songs, and get her in a place where she doesn't have her output her efforting is reduced so
Mm.
that she can get to the end of October, which is when the tour is over. And then she can come back, and then I can get into a regular, and no vocal coach, we sign up to habilitate the voice, not rehabilitate the voice.
Sure, exactly.
but rehabilitation is part of it. And as much as I don't like it, because it also is a psychological thing with the singer as well,
Mm.
vocal rehabilitation is also part of what we do.
Yes. Have you ever had to pull a singer off a tour? Has it ever been so bad that you've just gone,
I've
no?
made that suggestion, but it's never been taken. No, I don't wield that kind of power to take an artist off tour. I will make the suggestion to the powers that be, but they've never listened. They
So
would be like,
you've had to do that in the past.
I would suggest they shouldn't finish this tour, or they shouldn't do this, or they shouldn't do that, to the management or to agents or to whomever the artist will kind of listen to. And I will always get, absolutely not, that can't happen. We got to figure out something else
Mm. So this,
because of the money.
of course, of
Hmm.
course. So this singer that you're working with, obviously, like there's a pathology there that you've already said that she has polyps or a polyp. How, and you have said that it's because of the way that she is phonating.
Hmm.
But when a singer is on tour, how much of it is the singing and how much of it can it be lifestyle, that it's being on flights, being in air conditioning, eating bad food, not getting enough sleep, being expected to do all this press. They finish a show, they have to talk to media, wake up in the morning and do the morning show. How much of it is that aspect and how much of it is the stage segment?
With that varies from singer to singer. With her, it is 100% the voice
Mm-hmm.
and how she's producing certain sounds. With another singer, it could very well be everything that you said, the lifestyle, the speaking demands, the promotional touring as well, not just the singing tour, but the promotional tour, the morning shows and things of that nature. Who's surrounding them that might have faulty smoking habits,
Oh,
and they could be around people who are smoking, keeping late nights, not really, vocally dehydrated, not getting in enough steam or enough, hydration. So it's a case by case basis. I've seen it all. This particular artist, because I know her, I know it's a vocal thing. But another artist, it could very well be everything that you mentioned.
mm. I think the hardest thing I would imagine for this artist is to pull back that efforting, because so many singers feel that unless there is effort, it's not singing. If they feel that there's no effort, that can't be singing, because
Mhm.
effort and singing seem to go hand in hand for them. So it's kind of recalibrating the brain too, isn't it?
It is, and I can't control that. Only thing I can
No,
do is give the help, give the advice, and pray that they take it, and pray that they lean on the other support systems they have in audio, in background singers, in even playing the track if necessary, and hope that they preserve the instruments so that by the time they get to me, we can do some rehabilitative work and work collaboratively with the otolaryngologist and speech therapist and everyone else. But yeah, you can only give the information and hope that they take it. And that's all I can do. And I've done everything but cajole and convince and pray and say, please, please, please. But
yes.
ultimately, when I walk away, it really is on them at that point. And you just hope that they take it, and I also try to give them this language. It is not a reflection or a failure if you rely on these other support systems. It just reflects the fact that you're an athlete, and all athletes get injured at some point.
Exactly.
That's all it's a reflection of.
Mm.
And if an athlete is injured, we don't shame them. We don't shame them. And
No.
so I try to make sure that those are my parting words with any artist who calls me in this situation, to let them know this is not anything you need to feel embarrassed or ashamed about. And it's not a reflection of your talent, and it's not a reflection of your authenticity as an artist.
Mm.
It is a reflection of the fact that you have a very demanding career, and that the responsibilities that you have here are not the average responsibility for your average person, and that you are an athlete and you've gotten injured, and that's just what happened.
So
Um,
why is there so much shaming in our singing voice community? I don't know if you belong to any of the social media forums that the singing teachers are a part of. But let's just use the example of Adele. And she's not the only one. There's been so many artists who have had vocal pathologies over the years and had to stop their touring. But let's just use Adele, because I think because she has the big voice and everyone's, especially the classical voice community, man, did they pipe up and
they really did.
shame and
They really
blame
did.
and ridicule and put all CCM singers into that one category that we are playing with fire.
Yeah,
So,
they did.
I mean, shouldn't we be supporting singers and not shaming them? And they
I
don't
think
understand what it's like, because a classical singer gets up and does one or two songs. We have to work for hours on end in the CCM world
you really do.
and
You
sing and
really
dance
do.
and move and do all the acrobatics and, like, there's
And
so
write the
much.
songs. And write the songs
Yeah.
often. You're
So,
writing
yeah.
material.
So
Um,
why is our industry shaming? What
I
is
think
it the
Adele
classical
was very
voice?
brave. I
Oh yeah.
think artists have a very difficult time admitting to the world that they are struggling vocally. And I think Adele deserves so much credit for just being transparent about her vocal problems and her pathology and her injury. And I applaud her for her transparency and for her honesty. I think she liberated a lot of singers. After she admitted it, I
Mm,
noticed several others started coming forth, like
you're
Sam
right.
Smith.
I was going to say
Yeah,
Sam Smith,
yeah.
but
I
even Bruno Mars was here in Australia, and he said he can't sustain the work that how he sings in the recording studio. He cannot sustain in a live situation,
yeah,
and that he was struggling
yeah,
vocally.
yeah. And I think Adele liberated so many singers by being honest. That
Mm,
used to be such just the shame that you just hide and just don't tell people you're having vocal problems and just don't say it. And Adele, I think, she deserves credit for just liberating singers to say, look, I'm an athlete. I got injured. There it is. I'm getting healed, and I'll come back and continue to play this game or do this work. I think that you're right. And but again, as an opera singer, as a former opera singer,
yes.
I can tell you that opera is about an elite art form that was built and established on separatism. Let's just talk historically
Hmm.
about opera. 16th, 15th, 16th century Italy, at the time, opera was about aristocracy, access to music and music education, the salons happening in aristocracy in the homes, and composers having patrons like Haydn and the Esterházys and Mozart having patronages, and the wealthy being able to afford all of this elite sounding music. That if you had aristocracy and education and could afford formal music education, and sure, you invite Mozart to your living room to to play his latest, concerto or fugue or whatever it is. But what about the maids and the butlers and the footmen who were in service to aristocracy? What were they listening to? Well, they were going to the local pubs, and they were listening to what we now know is folk music. What we now understand to be folk music.
Yes.
Music of the folks, music of the people. It wasn't difficult to sing, very limited in the range, accessible lyrics, lyrics that were in languages that people spoke, in a vernacular that everyone understood. And it showed up in traveling, shows like traveling caravans like the troubadours and trouvères. And so we get all of this accessibility to music. And while the maids and butlers were in the local pubs listening to that, the people they worked for, the aristocracy, were in the castles listening to Haydn unveil the next symphony.
Yes.
So it was rooted in separatism.
Yes.
Now fast forward 300-400 years later, bel canto hasn't changed. Opera is still very much an elite art form for a very specific audience. It is still highly inaccessible in languages, in the ability for your average person to feel like they can participate, and even the culture and how you can show up at an opera. You can't show up culturally in an opera the way you can at a Beyonce concert. You cannot participate in an opera the way you can at a Beyonce concert. And so there is still this built-in inaccessibility. Now, the art form in and of itself is still highly beautiful, but it does require a cultivation of the throat that does not resonate in just regular human beings who speak a certain way or who navigate sound a certain way. And so when bel canto trained coaches hear a throat like Adele's, the first thing that they're going to filter that sound through is an operatic aesthetic. That is wholly unfair. Just like it's unfair for a pop singer,
yes,
CCM teacher, to filter an opera sound through a CCM aesthetic. Unless you're someone like me who kind of sits in both worlds.
Which is very unusual.
Yeah.
That's very unusual. Do you think then teachers should stick to their lanes? If they don't understand a style or have empathy for a style or don't immerse themselves in a particular style, they shouldn't teach it?
I do. I don't think that you have any business teaching bel canto to someone who wants to sing country music. Or if your only pedagogical knowledge is a bel canto pedagogy, you have no business teaching a Garth Brooks style singer or a Taylor Swift style singer. None at all. Because as much as people like to say, if you sing opera, you can sing anything. I just told you my story. Gospel music informed opera for me.
Yes. So therefore, in terms of higher education, I know that you're at the University of Southern California and you're working with the popular music students there, singer-songwriters. And I'm actually in a place of privilege too, where I do the same thing here in Australia, but we're very rare.
Yes,
Our breed is rare. What do you think about the status quo of higher education in terms of popular music education?
Our universities are very rare, yours and mine. And our universities are rare for a couple of reasons. One, many universities still here, especially some of our elite American conservatories, are still ensconced in a bel canto, primarily a bel canto curriculum, base curriculum for singers who want to come in and get a degree in voice or voice performance. So they go into a studio with a singing teacher whose background is only bel canto.
Mm.
And the curriculum is designed to support that teacher. So curriculums need to be rewritten, that will allow, because if the curriculum is written for students who come in and say, I want to study opera, then there needs to also be a separate curriculum written for students who come in and says, I want to study popular contemporary vocals. Right now, many schools, American schools especially, some of our renowned schools, are trying to implement a curriculum that was written for bel canto training
Mm.
into a popular music kind, and that doesn't work. And the unique thing about USC's popular music program and yours, it specifically is designed, written to reflect how artists are showing up in the contemporary music industry.
Yes. Yes.
It is, and again, I'm in a very privileged position because my
Likewise.
whole studio, my marching orders from my chair and my dean is, you need to unpack this in a way that shows up and how it shows up in what you do outside of USC. We need to make sure our students graduate and can enter into the music industry.
But isn't that what it's meant to be about? Imagine going and studying law, knowing that you're never going to get a job in a law office.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the statistics, popular music styles represent 99% of total music consumption. Classical music is 1%. Now you flip that around and you can say that, well, it's not 99%, but I worked out the statistics. It was like something like 92% of higher education is classical music and only 8% is popular music. That's unethical to me. It's like taking hundreds of thousands of dollars from people and they're never going to get a job in that. So one, it's unethical. And you're right that I think in order for popular music education to be successful, you need to have people working in the program that not only have the education to teach it, but have also walked the walk. They've been on the march. They've had a career. And that's one thing in my program. All the teachers, no matter what instrument they teach, and even the people teaching production, even my boss, we've all been in the industry for decades. Yeah. And our job is to make people employable. Mm-hmm. My students are already releasing new music. They're writing, recording, performing new music, as are yours, but you're on a different level with all the people in your private studio. But just in that university situation, which is what I'm talking about, I think that's, universities need to listen to the demands and the needs of the students themselves, and then call in people from the music industry as well.
That's how I got to USC. I was recruited from the music industry, but that's how every one of my colleagues at USC in the popular music program or the division of contemporary music got there by being recruited by the founder of the program, my good friend Chris Sampson, who was a visionary 15 years ago when I met him. And this was just an idea that he had for the University of Southern California. And now the idea has basically, because the popular music program at USC is so lucrative, it actually funds a lot of the other programs.
Yes.
Because and the truth of the matter is, my colleagues, I enjoy it, and I'm sure you can say the same. I mean, my chair is the wonderful, legendary Patrice Rushen of pop R&B fame, Forget Me Nots, you know, send me forget me nots, help me to remember, you know, and just a wonderful visionary and chair of the program. I have, you know, I work with Mike Garcia and Andy Abad and Doug Petty, and you know, and so many legends. And then in music, in our popular music industry, you know, we work with music promoters, legendary music promoters, who promoted careers, tours like Michael
Mm.
Jackson's tour,
Oh my
and
gosh,
you know,
wow.
and then Paul Jackson, you know, Jr., who's a good friend of mine, and I mean, the list goes on, and we all got there, and none of us, I think maybe one or two of us have doctorate degrees. We all got the doctorate from what we did,
Yeah,
but you know, and
yeah.
USC is good at that. They're good at pulling out of the world into their university and saying, and then you know, saying we've got so and so here, you know, that kind of thing. And you know, it really was something I wrestled with, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to go into academia, because I wasn't because you know, I was
Mm.
educated in academia, and
Of course.
I didn't want to go into an environment where my teaching would be put into a curriculum, because I understood that in the real world what I do wouldn't fit into a curriculum. There has to be moments where you break the rules. There have to be moments where you might take a mediocre voice and just give it the best it's got, because you see that the person is going to be a bigger brand ambassador
Mm.
of something. And so, you know, I struggled with that. And then my good friend Chris Sampson just reached out and said, you know, it's time for you to share now all this knowledge in this community. And I'm also fortunate to say that I was the first African American vocal coach USC hired in
Incredible.
Thornton's history.
Wow, wow.
I was
Congratulations.
shocked to know that there had not been a black coach either in the opera department, jazz, or popular voice departments at USC. Now, fortunately, since I've been there, we have, you know, a few more. But I was the lone wolf, and I couldn't believe it. Now, there were many reasons why I was told of that, but you know,
Mm.
but for the first 3 years of my 3 or 4 years at USC, I was the only vocal coach they had of color. Now that doesn't negate the fact that the other coaches were giving solid, popular CCM pedagogy. They were, but there were students of color who wanted someone modeled in front of them.
Yes, yes, 100%.
And many of the students of color, like myself, voices came out of the black church, and they didn't have that modeled in front of the wonderful CCM singers or CCM instructors who were very candid with me. They said, you know, I know how to sing pop music, but I didn't learn this in the black church. I'm not, you know,
Mhm,
I'm a white
mhm.
Jewish man, or I'm a, you know,
Yes,
whatever, you
yes.
know. And so when I came, the students of color, the BIPOC students were like, oh my God, finally, someone who sees where I came from and how this is really showing up in my throat,
Mm.
and how this has, you know, and I think that that was also huge for the program and for Thornton. And I'm so happy now that the classical division in Thornton has now hired, you know, a male teacher of color and a female teacher of color. So
Incredible.
there's three of us now.
Yes, yes.
And but I know in when I got there, I knew that and I think we shouldn't overlook how important it is for CCM teachers to also understand that, you know, you have to model a certain culture in front of your students.
Mm.
And if you have a lot of students of color, even some CCM teachers, and I won't name names, but I've heard when students of color come out of gospel music, even in CCM, they kind of, but kind of,
Okay, okay. They're not, there's no empathy or understanding for their roots.
there's not. And I say to them, what do you think Aretha Franklin was? Where do you
Yeah.
think Whitney learned to sing? Aretha Franklin's
Yes.
father was a minister. She got her voice in the church.
Yes.
And, I mean, this is the foundation. You have to understand that the religious component of it is part of it, but we get the sounds out of giving reverence to our religious experience. But that in turn recruits a level of fearlessness in our commitment to express and extol our religious fervor. And it comes out of that. And that's why we're not really harnessed or put in a box, because it's being expressed out of an outpouring of a religious experience. That's why you can't put it in a pedagogical box. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yes. I'm just going to, and you can stop me if you wish here. I'm going to put something out there because this is raising something in my mind. When, well, we met in Philadelphia through our dear friend, Dr. Trinice Robinson Martin. She introduced us. But I had seen you at this voice conference. You were sitting in the row that I was sitting in at a particular presentation. And I could see you were not happy with some of the information that was being shared in this presentation. And it was about acoustics and voice science. And earlier you talked about how much that informed what you do. But when we spoke about that particular incident, because I wasn't happy about what was being said either, and that's why I gravitated to you, because I was thinking, I love this person because her and I are thinking the same thing. I don't know her, but I know what she's thinking, and I want to say, I'm with you here. And it would, so this idea of how acoustics informed what you do and voice science informed what you do, my argument about acoustics is you can't pigeonhole everybody. And what is going on in a spectrogram or whatever your device you're using to gauge what is going on with the voice acoustically, how does that fit in culturally? Because how are you going to say to Beyonce, you know what, this is showing that that formant is not, how can you say everyone needs to have this going on in their voices?
I was what you the reaction you saw out of me was twofold. And I remember the lecture that you're referring to. One, the immediate reaction I had was this person has never been outside of their studio. They they've just been in their studio implementing all of this in these students who probably don't even understand it.
I don't understand it. Yes.
That's the first thing. And that's my biggest problem with a lot of CCM teachers. You need to come out of the studio, go into these concerts, go in backstage at iHeart Music Awards, go in and see what is really happening. So that's the first thing that gave me frustration. I say, okay, you have never been outside of your studio.
Mm.
The other thing is, yes, I know a lot of voice science. And like you said, I am very careful of how I utilize it, which is why I tell you it informs my teaching. But I never burden my singers with that
No,
information. I
no.
use it for myself to help me guide them.
I call that weaponizing when you use information in that way.
Yeah.
Weaponizing knowledge.
Yeah. And it is, for some teachers, it's just their way to show off what they know.
100%.
You know, I just want to be impressive and show you what I know about all this voice sign stuff. Okay,
Mhm.
whoop-de-doo.
Exactly, whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, I mean, that's nice and all, but this person in front of you doesn't care. And they don't even understand it. So just use it as knowledge for yourself to help get them to a place. And sometimes you may need that voice science knowledge to help get them to a place, and sometimes not. But it's also in how you articulate it. It has to be digestible. It has to be done in a language that makes sense. And this is the other thing you saw in me. In a concert situation, a lot of that acoustics is handled through the audio engineer. It's
Yeah.
not even necessary. And I'm sitting there thinking, this is a moot point because the audio engineer will handle all of this,
Yes.
him or herself, in the audio booth. They will configure the microphones. They will configure the monitors. They will even add the formant digitally. This is all moot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm sitting there thinking, okay, you have not been at a concert.
Mm-hmm.
This is already configured in technology. The singer has microphones that have built-in compressors and built-in this. They're $5, $10, $15,000 microphones that are many chips in there that take care of all this for them.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
it's nice to be able to tell them about the formants and stuff, particularly if the singer really wants to know that. And I do have
That's it.
clients that say, oh, that's interesting. I want to know more. And that's fine. But again, if they're on tour and they're struggling, they don't want to hear any of that. They could care less. And so you go to the audio engineer and you say, how can we configure the microphone so that they are working less? What can we do to amplify them so that they're not working as hard? And then I go to the background singers. Listen, I need you to double these vocals. I need you to stack these harmonies. I need you to do everything that they're paying you the money to do. Actually, I'm going to reconfigure the background vocals. So a lot of that acoustic stuff, yes, it's nice information. But if they really were outside of their studio and talked to a really knowledgeable audio engineer, the audio engineer will tell them, well, you know, I can do that by pushing this button. And it's done. I mean, that's nice that the human voice can do that, but I can push the button and when they sing in the mic, it'll sound like that's happening. Now, that may sound like it's cheating or whatever it is, but you said it so beautifully. We're talking about not like 80% of the population is listening to this music, where the 1% or 5% is listening to opera. So opera is more of the organic acoustical framework, but you only got 5% of the world. Whereas Beyonce is more, let the audio engineer do this. And we got 80% or 90% of the world. So humanity, human beings from America to Korea, I mean, and let's just pause here. You've got a whole K-pop kind of thing happening too.
Yeah. And J-pop and
J-pop
Mando pop and Canto pop and then all of Europe.
and all of Europe, all inspired by music that's rooted in African American culture.
100%.
All of it.
Yes.
Is inspired. The very music that even some CCM teachers still frown upon because it's rooted in a religious kind of experience that's not governed by intonation or not governed. And that's another thing. People often say, well, a lot of times in gospel music, it's particularly in church, this bad intonation is this. I said, let me just be clear. The fact that it's sometimes off pitch is part of the experience. So let's not put it in, oh, the intonation's off. It could be, but the intonation's off because of the expression of the religious experience.
Well, I would use the word emotion to a student. I would say,
emotion, right.
When you're emotional, people forgive those imperfections. If you're being honest and authentic and you're truly expressing what it is you're needing to express and you're telling your story in your own voice, audiences will forgive those imperfections.
Absolutely. They actually celebrate them.
Yes,
you're up there and you're just, yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, come on. Audiences celebrate that because that resonates somewhere that it's not governed by, oh, the intonation's not. And trust me, I know how to sing in tune, but I also understand how to allow my voice to just feel.
Yes.
And whatever comes out is what comes out.
Yes, yes. In the moment. On that day, because what might happen in an hour's time could be completely different.
Could be completely different.
Yeah. And if we're being honest and true, it will be different.
It will be. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Dr. Trinice writes about this so beautifully in her book, So You Want to Be a Gospel Singer, where she writes, when gospel music is being sung in the context of the Black church, don't assume that just because the pitches aren't accurate, that they don't know what they're doing. That inaccuracy is part of the experience.
Beautifully put. Yeah.
And sometimes in a CCM studio, when they hear the pitch inaccuracies among students who are groomed in that Black church experience, they assume, they start kind of tilting in the classical world. Well, that's the wrong pitch. Well, it is, but does it inform the lyric? If the lyric is cry and they're doing, oh, then what's wrong with that?
That's what I love about CCM, about this music, which has come from African American music, is all those vocal effects that give you that space to share an emotion in the way that you truly want to, and allows for vulnerability. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, perfection is boring. Really? I don't want to hear perfection. I want to hear the real you. I want to hear what you have to say in your own words, in your own voice. And it's okay to sob and to cry and to be breathy. Don't stay in any of those permanently, but use them as you need and as you wish to tell your story, and it's fine. I know you've had this big career. You've worked with the Grammys, you've worked with music labels, record companies, in academia, with these artists. Have you ever been silenced in any of the work or felt that you didn't have a voice yourself other than that one experience in your classical training? Have you ever felt that you couldn't speak up and share what you've just shared?
Early in my coaching career, yes. But I've been around now long enough that a lot of people know me. So I feel more confident now. But early in the career, when I first started in my little small studio in Chicago, I really, really felt that. But, 20 some odd years later, most people know she just, that those insecurities have gone away, but it went away because time and just years. But yeah, early on, I did feel like, I don't have a voice in this. I'm not quite even sure how to defend or advocate for these singers. And I've and that and but time took care of that, and just me just really sticking to it, and one singer at a time, one producer at a time, one agent at a time, one manager at a time, one label at a time,
Mm,
and to the point where I have friends now who are label executives who now will just call me and say, "What do you think?"
that's
But
amazing.
but that took years.
Well,
In the
you've paid
beginning,
your dues.
yeah.
You've paid your dues. How can we, as a voice community, we're starting to wind up now because we've spoken for so long. We're going to split this up into 2 episodes. How can we, as a voice community, better support our singers? Do you feel?
The CCM community, first of all, if you're dealing with singers that are already performing, make sure that you show up at a few shows just to check things out, see the venue that they're singing in. A lot of beginning artists in this in popular music sing at bars, or
Yes, like
just
mine do. Mm.
yeah, it doesn't have to be a great venue, but you do want to go and see what the audio setup is, what if they're singing with a band, what are the volumetric levels that the band is playing at.
Oh, that does my head in.
Mhm.
Guitarists need to learn they're not the lead instrument in the band.
Exactly, exactly. And coaches won't know how to support them unless they actually go out and see, okay, your guitarist isn't doing this right. And so when you come back to the studio, let's work in a way so that and that kind of thing. They need to, that's the first thing, they need to show up. And as much as that may be a difficult thing to do, I'm not saying go to every show, but I'm
Mm,
saying go to a few shows so that you can see what they're up against. That
mm.
way, that will help you train them when they come to the studio. Okay, I went to your show and I saw your percussionist was just banging away and you were just hollering and screaming past your athletic levels. So let's work in this way or that way. Because even as a CCM teacher, you could be teaching them things that isn't applicable to how it shows up in their live shows.
Yes.
And that's important. You got to see, and there's all kinds of CCM singers. There's CCM singers who are just singer-songwriters. It's just them and their acoustic guitar.
Yeah. Those little indie, I call them the little indie singers, little
Yep.
folk indie singers.
Yep. And you need to see, okay, I saw what you're doing, and now that's going to help me when you come back to the studio. So that's the first thing I will encourage. Please try to get to your students' shows, one or two. And I know that that's asking a lot, especially if you have a large studio. But it does help you help them when you know what's happening when they're not in the studio, because you could be teaching them something pedagogically that's not relevant to how
Yes.
it shows up away from the studio.
Yes.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is you need to immerse yourself in their aesthetic, their style. If they're country
Mm,
music, start listening to some country music. If it's rock, rock. If it's neo soul, neo soul. If it's gospel, start listening to, get a little familiarity with the genres that you're teaching. Again, it doesn't have to be your
yes.
favorite genre, but you do need to hear it being done so that you will, again, know culturally what's happening. If it's country music, listen to Garth, listen to Keith Urban, listen to your country artists, so that you can say, okay, I'm getting a sense of what's happening here and why, and now that helps inform how I need to teach.
Excellent
Um,
advice.
And the final thing I would say is you might have to get personal and tiptoe into the lifestyle. What are you doing at home? Do you smoke? Are you a recreational marijuana smoker, or do you smoke medicinal marijuana? Um, you know, I'm a I'm a firm believer in not telling adults what to do, but I also need to give them an alternative. Okay, if you're going to smoke marijuana, after you smoke, you need to also make sure, because it's very drying, make sure you do this and reconstitute the voice, get it rehydrated again. make sure that you take care of yourself. I'm a proponent. If you're an adult and you're going to smoke marijuana, you're going to just smoke marijuana.
Yeah.
That's just what you're going to do.
Mm.
I can tell you how it's going to affect your voice, and hope, again, you heed my advice. But once you leave my studio, I can't control that.
No, 100%.
And
Yeah.
so all I can do is tell you what the effects will be and pray that you heed my advice, or tell you if you're going to smoke, then make sure you take care of your voice this way afterwards. If they're doing more hardcore drugs, then I encourage them to probably seek, especially if I notice that they're using it to help them with performance anxiety, which is often.
Mm-hmm.
Singers will use hardcore drugs to help with performance anxiety. Then I will give them alternatives. And I've done that with one artist who used drugs because he had terrible performance anxiety.
What kind of drug?
He was actually using cocaine.
Okay.
He was snorting it.
Mm-hmm.
And he did it because it relaxed him on stage, and And I said, and so again, I gave him some alternatives. I said, you know what? In order for me to help you, let me show up at one of your shows and see what's going on. So I went backstage, and sure enough, he was about to do some cocaine. And I said, you know what? Let's figure out if something else works. So what I did was I gave him some alternatives. I said, let's do some meditative work. I said, do you like yoga? And I said, I'm not a yoga person, but do you know any yoga? He didn't know any yoga. And I said, let's meditate. I said, let's talk. Let's talk you down off this ledge and see if that helps. And then I put on some soothing music, and I said, he said, wow, that's really relaxing music. And after a while, we began to come up with other things. And now he has a massage therapist who comes in and gives him a full body massage before. He listens to the meditative music that I was playing. And he also burns, believe it or not, incense.
That's amazing. And
yeah.
You know what? You could possibly have saved that person's life too.
Yeah, he was
it's
saying
not
that
just
it was
the
because
voice.
of anxiety. And that's why I tell CCM, you have to show up backstage to see what's happening.
Yes.
Especially if they're doing drugs, you're just going to have to walk in that room and say, okay, what's happening here? And again, he's an adult, so you don't want to be a parent, but you want to say, can we explore some other options before you do this?
Yes. Yes.
And if they say no, then they say no. But he happened to say, yeah, let's just see what else we can do. What do you got in mind?
Amazing. Well, we're going to wrap it up here, Lyndia. MzLyndia, you have been really
the
kind.
The Grammys gave me that MzLyndia. The
I love
Grammy
it.
Kids.
Yeah, I love it. That. Yes. Mm-hmm. So we're going to wrap it up. Love your work. Keep doing what you're doing. Our field, our singing voice community needs people like you who have that kind of experience. And you should be sharing that with the world. It is invaluable. Nothing can replace experience. Knowledge, reading out of a textbook is one thing, but to actually experience it is completely different. It's like being a CCM singer and looking at a piece of sheet music and singing from a piece of sheet music. It is very different to then when you listen to it and that is the lived experience. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much. And hopefully we're going to catch up very soon.
I hope so. Thank you so much for this podcast and what you're doing for the singing community at large. CCM, classical, I mean, whoever's listening, this is such a valuable source and tool and resource that you're offering. And it's just been a joy, truly a joy. And I'm so grateful for our newfound and budding friendship. I can't wait to see you in Queensland at the conservatory there. I'm just excited.
Yes, and I'm going to see you in LA as well. I'm coming to see you next February. So I'm very excited to hang out. I think you and I could be dangerous together.
I'm already making plans.
Oh, no, thank you. Love your work. Love you. And best wishes with everything that you're doing. Keep up your amazing work. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.